Great to see you again. This is our 14th vodcast, a series of conversations with our strata experts, or at least one strata expert this time. It'll be, as usual, we're going to be talking about the human factors rather than legal requirements. It doesn't mean that we don't touch on legal requirements, but of course, we can't give legal advice, so that's why we say we don't talk about legal requirements, but we'll steer you in the direction of when you might need an expert. In earlier episodes, we explored why people volunteer to be on a committee and their experience of joining a committee, and what are the most important steps for a committee to do from day one, which also include managing your manager. I always just like to recap those 5 because it's really important for the committee, regardless of doing EV preparedness, which is what we're focusing on here, that the committee overall keeps the bigger picture, in the vision in front of them at all times. And that is, you need to build relationships with each other and your manager, creating a work plan for the year, which is an action list to be achieved. Also, creating a plan that is beyond a year is also important, and particularly when we're talking about EV preparedness, which is a project that may go beyond 12 months. So again, more often to have a vision that goes beyond 12 months is also going to be useful. Creating an effective handover from the outgoing committee to the incoming committee, and especially again when you're straddled across major projects, very important that the next committee is upskilled about where you're up to and any hits and falls along the way. Keeping communication open and transparent. Of course, that is not only between yourselves, but more importantly to the lot owners for whom you need to report. So that's a really important part. And then recruitment and induction. So recruitment onto committee is an important thing that we all need to focus on, because people aren't aware of the benefits of being on the committee and how we can improve and sell that in. But once we bring them in, they need to be properly inducted so people know what's expected of them. So that's a really important step as well. And all that's part of, creating effective and efficient committees. These sessions are all recorded, and you can get access to all of the past recordings, and I recommend that you do go to those if you haven't been part of the journey all the way along. If you just drop into the subscribe to Inside Strata newsletter into Google search engine, it will take you to the page where you can register. Once you've registered, then you'll automatically, first of all, be notified of any of these events that come up, and you'll also then get access to the history of the sessions that we've had. Joining us today again, and I thank you, is David Hamilton. David comes with experience in multi-storey and apartment living. He is a lot owner living in a strata. He has and continues to serve on his committee. And has a particular passion around EV preparedness, so much passion that he's turned that now into a into a job where he just exclusively helps other OCs achieve the same thing for their building. And David is also one of the founders of the South Bank 3006 New Owners Networking Group. So 2 great wins for David there in improving things out there in the strata land. So thank you for giving up your time again, David, and joining us. Over the last 6 sessions, we have particularly been, while we've had David as the expert, focused on EV preparedness for buildings. It's an important topic, but it also, the same framework and principles that we talk about can be applied to the sustainability more generally. So we know as a society we are facing a lot of, or particularly our OC communities, are going to be facing things like gas conversion, solar, EV, more and more waste, different types of waste management and separation and all those things, and how they potentially can work in our buildings. So the key things in all of those discussions, of course, is conducting a survey. The importance of understanding how, who knows what, and who wants to be part of whatever the initiative is you're considering. So keeping in touch with the owners and the residents, because it's not just about the owners. Yes, they're the ones who've got to pass resolutions, but in order to really make effective steps in sustainability, we need to bring everyone on the journey. One of the other things to consider for a committee, of course, is what due care and due diligence means. That was an interesting discussion on one of the podcasts. The right way and the wrong way to go about preparing your building. Again, another good conversation. The importance of using using expert advice, and that's another good session too. In our last session, we discussed the implementation phase and what to do next. Importantly, we always refer to the 9 action steps that an OC committee should consider. And I will just pop those in the box again. No, it's dropped off the I'll come back and pop those in the box for you so you can see those again and have them in front of you. But in the meantime, David, you've had some, in the last month, you've of course continued in your busy work of helping all of your OCs and committees consider and think about the EV preparedness that continually come your way, which is great because it helps us understand what are the things that are confusing for either our lot owners or committees or residents generally, because some of the questions are there for residents as well. One of the first ones let's talk about is Wi-Fi connectivity required for the building?
Right. Well, let's say Wi-Fi connectivity should be considered by any owners corporation where you have particularly, say, a car park where communications are difficult. EV charging systems require connectivity, not so much for the charging system today, but in the future, that will be an additional way of connecting the charger to load management. But more importantly, owners of EVs, a number of the brands of EV upgrade the software, which is key to the operation of an electric vehicle, over the air. So classically, Tesla is the best known example. But a number of other manufacturers are now implementing over-the-air software upgrades. And these can just occur quite, in essence, randomly, but you can't do it, obviously, while you're driving the car. So it's necessary, when you're making your building EV ready, that one of the components that will need to go in is a Wi-Fi connectivity if you don't have good cellular connectivity in the car park. Now, if you're underground, chances are you're going to not have very good cellular connectivity. But there's another great benefit that any OC should consider right today where they don't have connectivity for cellular connectivity in a car park, and Wi-Fi or putting in cellular connectivity into a car park, underground car park, is a great safety measure. It's a great way of making owners feel safer in the car park, but also if there's an emergency incident, it doesn't have to be something which is that they're being threatened by a third party. It could be a health incident. So it's pointless having an Apple Watch that tells, or a phone that can communicate an emergency when you've fallen over, if you're in the bottom, in basement level 5 of a car park and it can't connect to the world. So I think that's a great added benefit, and it's not, and it's something that OCs just should be considering these days, because people are totally reliant on mobile devices, on smartwatches, on smartphones to connect to the world. And so that's a sort of like, depending on how you want to come at it, you either come at it that an EV network, when you put in the charging, is going to require it to enable owners to upgrade the software in their car. They can't do it while they're driving, so but it needs to be done on a regular basis. And Wi-Fi connectivity between chargers and load management systems is available now, but it's still a bit ragged around the edges, for want of a better way of describing it. So that's one of the, it comes up as a question, why do we need to do it? Well, I think you need to do it for EV, but you should consider it in a wider context of the health and safety of all owners in a building or all residents in a building.
And there's a couple of others I can think of too, is that it allows your CCTV system, for example, to then be able to be connected for remote monitoring.
Right.
And another one is your access control, so that if you've got Wi-Fi, then it can allow programming or updating while on site. Rather than having to, to bring that technician out, they can remotely dial in and do stuff. So there's some added benefits just even with some of the, I'll call it legacy equipment, that is sitting there that could suddenly become more productive and cheaper to run because you're not having to bring people physically in a car to access and program things as soon as you've got Wi-Fi connection. So it does simplify, yes, the operation of the building. A lot of the meters that are installed can be Wi-Fi connected, so they can be monitored. Send back for monitoring and look at because a lot of them are smart meters now, etc. The embedded network meters, all those kind of things. So having the Wi-Fi does give you a lot more benefits further down the line.
I like to keep building functionality separate to owner functionality. That's just me. I think this is essentially an open Wi-Fi network, whereas a lot of the building security and building maintenance systems and building operation systems, I think, need to be in a more secure environment. So they just need to take some advice on that when you're setting up Wi-Fi in the basement, so to speak. Okay. Yeah,
but you could have separate. You could have separate routers, whatever for it. It's about providing the having the ability to connect to something is really getting it in that frame. So before we go off that Wi-Fi, then in the overall proposal, let's say, that a committee would be considering looking at, is that that Wi-Fi, if you like, be it that it needs to be upgraded, etc. Is that in it? Is that part of the whole feasibility thing that's pulled into it, or is that sort of an optional? This is a nice to have, but it's not in the bare bones cost.
I think that it's in the bare bones cost, particularly when you've got an underground car park. Mm-hmm. Above ground, not so essential, but even then, over time, that will become just part of what you need to have. So, and that really is only because those car parks have much better cellular connectivity than
It's a whole interesting, because I was just thinking, does that mean if the building doesn't have it, does that mean, because you mentioned that the cars themselves need to update to, get, as like our laptops, obviously get new software and security patches and all that sort of stuff. Does that mean someone's having to do it as a mobile hotspot out in the street if there's no connectivity in the basement?
Yes, although Tesla, you can obviously take it to a Tesla fast charging point and you can
and do it there.
But either way, you're still going to be connecting your car to your phone to download the data. It's not large amounts of data, but it's essential that it's done because the software updates. The EVs are essentially computers on four wheels, right?
Yeah.
right? That's what drives them. They're smart vehicles, far smarter than an internal combustion engine. And in an internal combustion engine, when you take it for its service, as we know, they just plug in the OBB port and it talks to a computer in Germany or somewhere else in the world, and its software is updated and diagnostics are done. For EVs, the EV, not all EVs, but a number of EV manufacturers but they're changing the whole dynamic of how people buy cars, how cars are serviced, and how the software is managed. And increasingly that doesn't involve, a service network. It doesn't involve sales, what do you call them? Going to a dealer to buy and test drive and look at the product. Tesla, you can buy you buy a Tesla online, you buy a Hyundai online, you buy quite a number of the vehicles online, no test drive. You just look at reviews, you see what other people say. That's how they market the vehicle.
That's amazing.
So the vehicle itself it's just like, I buy a computer. Do I go and test drive a computer? No, I read reviews about it. I look at it online. I place an order and it turns up.
Gosh, that I find that really quite scary. I just bought an EV bike, but I had to go and I wouldn't buy one online without having tried one, to see, because hill climbing is the most important thing for an EV.
You can book a Tesla test drive, but I'm saying, I know people who have sat in front of their TV, said, "Oh, I need a new car." 10 minutes later, they've ordered their Tesla. They haven't got out of sitting in front of the TV.
Yeah, wow, that's amazing. Another question that came in from one of your committee members was: would the OC capital expenditure be a sunk cost?
No, it becomes an asset of the building, right? So it's not a sunk cost. It's an asset. It's added to the asset. Becomes part of the maintenance plan. Ultimately, you're creating additional value in the building with this infrastructure. It's and that's a sort of leads into, well, what do we do about it? When we've got it, right? And it should become part of the next of your maintenance plan at the next review of the maintenance plan. So the quantity surveyor that you might retain to prepare a maintenance plan should be incorporating these assets into that maintenance plan. Some of them will have a 10, 15-year life. Some of them will have a 5-year life. But it should become part of that asset base, and thus can be refreshed when you need to in time future.
So, excuse me, speaking of quantity surveyors, when I bought my unit, I got a depreciation schedule from by the quantity surveyor for the building that the unit that I purchased, and it in that had a list of the equipment in particular within the building. And then, these clever people go off and create this depreciation schedule, which apparently went off on my tax. Apart from that, I know nothing more of it. Is this something, because this is equipment, is this something that I can add to that schedule?
Well, that is a tax and accounting question, and I'd feel more comfortable.
So we should, in other words, I suppose the message was, sorry, yes, I didn't mean to put you on the spot. You're not that person, but it would be something when my building does invest in this, more assets, if you like, or improvements, I should at least let my accountant know, because it might be something that can be depreciated, I guess.
That's right. Your entitlement to the share of that thing would be something that could be. Now, as you've rightly said, you should talk with your accountant. It's tax advice, and I'd feel more comfortable if people did that. But it is adding to the assets of the owner's corporation, of which you are entitled to. So the owner's corporation is, as I characterize it, it's like a collective. It doesn't own the assets. This body, this unknown thing called an owner's corporation, now has an additional there's additional services and functionality that are now added to the building. Just like if you didn't have air conditioning and you added air conditioning to it, that would be the equivalent that I can think of.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, no, I'd agree with
something
that.
You should talk with your accountant about.
I certainly will be. I will ask the question. Who pays for the maintenance or upgrade of those OC assets? So it's now installed. What's going to happen from there?
Well, in the main, if you think about it, most of the assets that the owner's corporation is installing have quite long life cycles, and they go into a maintenance plan, and they will be replaced on a cyclic basis, say 10, 15 years. So, the distribution board probably has a 15, maybe even longer life. The load management system, you're probably writing off over 5 years. That's that. It's a mixture of software and hardware. Probably 5 years would be a normal depreciation cycle on that sort of asset. And there are different mod options as to how that is funded. So it could be that the load management system is actually funded by the owners who make their car park EV ready, and not by the wider owners corporation.
Yeah.
So they are paying for it. So the OC may fund it and then recover the costs of that asset from that particular class of owners. And then, so that's, at this stage, I would say every 5 years, it's going to be written off. Just like a charger is probably, an owner who owns a charger will probably replace it every 5 years.
Yes. Yeah. That's interesting. One of the things I like to do, of course, is touch on what's been in the headlines this week, because it's a forever evolving space, and it's, always interesting to just have something that, has just hit the headlines, and what do we think about it. So this week's one is a curbside charger. And in New South Wales, they're trialling also a similar sort of thing, but they're putting the charger on a light pole. Now, this is essentially, interestingly, it's for the properties that don't have parking on site. And there are key, particularly the older parts of Melbourne, where this is a key, St Kilda, Richmond, those, Collingwood, Fitzroy, those kind of areas where they are multi-unit dwellings, but with no parking, and all of their parking is on street. So here we have, in particular, that's one cohort of people who will, potentially benefit from this. Then we do have the next level up where they may have parking, but it's either not even under a carport, but it's just at least off-road, and then they might have a car park. So in having these conversations we do, whilst we've only really talked about apartment buildings with basement, the 9 steps that I've put in the chat box, finally got it to work, there actually still apply to your type of development, but with some little variations around how you might consider, like obviously you haven't got cable trays running in everywhere. And so therefore some of those construction techniques would be slightly different. If you're in the cohort of looking at the curbside charger, then you've got the extra stakeholder engagement of council, to get that permission of private infrastructure running under public infrastructure. So that's someone else. What other things, David, would do you kind of just see that if you were dealing with not in the basement, out in the open air, that people would consider?
Well, I think it really goes to the fact that some part of your property, aka your car park in one shape or form or another, if it's attached to your lot, will be connecting to owners corporation property, the main switchboard. It could be even connecting in some small places. It may be possible to connect to your own switchboard, for instance. But somewhere along the line, there will be this passage that goes through owners corporation property.
Yeah.
And so an owners corporation needs to consider at all times the legal and commercial arrangements that it's going to put in place between it as the manager of that common property and the owners who have an entitlement to the common property. And I don't think that differs. Yes, some of the technology issues will change. The particular news report obviously is designed. I mean, that style of pop-up charger, curbside charger, is quite common around the world, and they're that's being put in place for people who own a single unit dwelling, as in they're not in a strata, but they want to be able to charge at home, and clearly they don't want to be running a power cord from inside the house out to the car. And so it's really just bringing the connection point of a charger right next to the car. I think that's going to get some interesting things in terms of trial. Do you, as the owner of one of those properties, have a right to be the only person that parks at that point? How are you going to I can see how to do the controlling of the consumption of the electricity, but I thought it was quite interesting when I looked at it and said, well, there've been incidents at fast charging stations overseas where people who don't like EVs deliberately go and park in the charging spots. Right?
Yep, that'll happen.
So that will happen in this situation, I suspect, unless the council designates it in some way, and then they have to go around and enforce it. So I think it's a great outcome for that group of people. But it highlights, that last issue really highlights for an owners corporation that it's the same problem that an owners corporation has with when it wants to put in a shared charger as its solution. That is, the management of it is a nightmare. Therefore, let's try and work out a technical solution and a commercial and legal solution that enables an owner in a strata, no matter how the strata is configured and where the car parks are that are associated with it, how they charge their vehicle, as if they had a single unit dwelling with a garage.
Yes. Yeah, no, I agree. Well, as usual, that's all we have time for today. The time always goes so quickly. We could talk on just the asset and the creation of assets is a conversation new this week, and we will revisit that more formally as we dig deeper into the ownership of assets and shared assets, probably in line with that further accounting standards conversation, because all of those are going to link together, which will be interesting. But that's a topic further down the track. So, David, thank you again for giving up your time and sharing the valuable information. We have a few other of those committee questions that we will work through. month, and they were all very interesting questions. So there's a few of those we'll touch off next time. Thank you, everyone else. And if you've got any questions of your own that you would like to be considered by David and or Catherine and Nick when they're with us on it, please send in an email with any of those questions. Of course, at any time you could pop them in the chat box, but we kind of missed that for the moment this week. But please feel free to email us in, and we'll add it on to the topic of discussion. A question from the audience would be great. So have a safe weekend, everyone, and we hope to see you in a month's time at the next podcast. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.